The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those Knuckleheads of Liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We are coming at you on July 6th, 2022. And again, boy, I tell you, we've been talking all about SCOTUS and all kinds of crazy things happening with that. Well, even though Roe versus Wade was a big thing, the court's actually done a lot of other things too, and we're going to talk about a few of those on this show. So before we get into it, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have on the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. And my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So let's jump right into it. Kind of a big decision on sort of not hugely monumental as far as, industry or anything like that, but kind of a potentially a of separation of church and state a little bit here. So essentially there was a football coach who was praying after games on the field, and he was and so it was voluntary. He wasn't forcing any players to do it, but he would just sort of go out on his own at the end of the game, take a knee and just sort of pray silently to himself, I guess. And so I guess a lot of other players started doing it with him. And the school then got upset about it, and so they fired him for it. And so he wound up taking this all the way to the Supreme Court, and this Supreme Court came down on his side, saying that, it's his free speech. He wasn't forcing anybody to do anything religious. He was just sort of praying on his own, and the intent of the separation of church and state was that it simply not be to penalize people who wanted to practice their religion, but simply to not have religion encroach into government. So what do you guys think about this case? It's kind of an interesting case. It seems like there's some possible things that could fall out of this in the future as well. Why don't you guys jump in on this?
Well, I think over the years, the meaning of the Establishment Clause of the U.S. Constitution have been grossly distorted, because the religion in all forms, any encroachment of religion into the public space where government authorities are involved, in this case, it's a school district, it was interpreted to mean that no, there's always that separation. There always should be the separation. But the intent of the Establishment Clause was to prevent and to prohibit the government from advocating for a particular religion. So, for instance, they can't say, well, we only want the Catholics in this space, we only want the Anglicans in this space, or the Muslims in this space, or whatever. The government has to be totally neutral in terms of the advocation of religion. But what have happened over the years is that every form of religion expression have been treated as a violation of the Establishment Clause. And what the court is trying to say, that is incorrect. Okay? In this particular case, the coach, I think he was an assistant coach actually, was not forcing anybody. And as a matter of fact, the school district, which is the government authority here, was not even supporting him in this endeavor. So this coach was not forcing anyone to join him in this thing. He will go on the field on the 50-yard line, and some of his players will join him, and they will pray and that kind of stuff. It was not the government trying to advocate for the establishment of any religion. So the court said the guy was right. He had a free speech right to advocate for whatever he wants to pray to, whichever God he wants to pray for, and all that kind of stuff. And I think it was a sensible ruling. It does not mean every expression of religion in a public space, as in terms of like a a school or something like that, every avocation of religion in those spaces are not violations of the Establishment Clause because we still have free speech rights.
Yeah, I think it was a good ruling too. That was a good explanation too, Leon, that I thought you did just now. I appreciate that. And yeah, I think the left just hates religion.
Yes, we know.
Is that a true statement?
Absolutely.
Except for their own secular religion. That they love. They love that.
Oh, yeah.
That.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, I mean, they want to be able to establish the religion of sex in schools. They want to make that the religion that they're going to teach your little Johnny and little Mary about, and they're going to make sure that they have the right attitude about all aspects of the human sexual experience embedded in their tiny little brains at the age of 5 and 6 and 7 years of age. Right. So they want that religion embedded in the skulls full of mush, but they but they don't want anything else, especially all this nonsense about Jesus Christ or anything like that. Forget about that. No can do. No can do. But I mean, in this case, it was clearly not the establishment of a particular religion by a government entity of any kind. It was a stupid football coach praying after the game, and nobody was apparently even necessarily invited, but he went out there, and the players who wanted to followed, and those that wanted to continue to worship the sex god were able to stay off to the side and worship the sex god. Right. I don't know. They had their dildos out there or something. I'm not sure, but so I don't know. It's a good ruling. Next
is the sex goddess Christina Aguilera. I think she did a dance recently. Featured something like that.
There you go.
But before we leave this topic, there was another ruling by the court that has to do with school choice and another issue of religion. So I believe it's in Maine. They had a sort of school choice program. But one of the things that they did, that they forbid for using the same logic about the Establishment Clause and whatever and that kind of stuff, they prohibited religious schools from participating in the program. The vouchers or whatever it is they were distributing could not be used in religious schools with religious backgrounds. And the courts ruled against the state of Maine on that particular issue, because it did not violate the Establishment Clause. The money was going to give, or however the program was going to be administered, but it was the parents making the choice as to where they wanted to send the children. And that was an important factor. It's not the government was telling somebody they had to go somewhere, or you had to go listen to this person or anything like that. The parents was making the choice. And the court said that the Establishment Clause was not violated by the parents making the choice and sending their kids to a religious school if they so chose.
Yeah. Leon, was this SCOTUS or a federal court? I was just curious.
This was the Supreme Court. There was a ruling
Court. Okay.
Before this one we are speaking about.
It's a slightly different time. I'm completely with you on the whole main thing, that one you just brought up. On this particular one, I just a tiny bit of pushback, and that's that, you could see where, let's say, for instance, if you were an administrator at a school or something else, and you had some kind of an after work get together or something else that's centered around religion, and you might feel compelled to go if you wanted to advance potentially, whether it be in some government agency, right? If you're not hanging out with the people, right? Then, but to me, the solution is not to bar people from being able to practice religion. The solution is, why have we gotten government so big that it's in everything so that we have to worry about religion butting up against it, right? I mean, if we had mostly private schools competing against one another, this wouldn't be an issue at all, right? I mean, all of these schools could literally just do, you could have a religious school over here, have a non-religious school. And to me, that's the real libertarian choice here is let's shrink government here a little bit so that this isn't an issue, period, with, religion and government coming head to head. So anyways, that's just my thought.
I have to push back a little bit on your pushback, Jason. Okay. I mean, sure, I can see where if for instance you're having some after school thing and it's religiously oriented, some kid might feel some pressure to go to that, even though the coach never said that you have to come to it, or whoever the administrator said you have to come to it, and without stating it, it could retard or keep them back from getting ahead in whatever program they engaged in. However, if there are no clear, explicit expressions of forcing children into those religious events or anything like that, if there are no expressions of it, I do not see how we could assume them because some kid felt the pressure. So I would say even in those cases where a kid may have felt a certain pressure, even though he was not told to do it, but he felt the pressure to do it, I would say in those cases, I don't think the establishment clause will be violated even in those cases. But I do agree with your statement as the solution, the overall solution to this is where we have private schools competing against each other and that kind of stuff. I do agree with that, but I do push back on your original premise.
Yeah, because I mean that's always going to be in the details. You're always going to have to parse the story to figure out was somebody truly discriminated against or not. And just think, well, let's just shrink government, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore.
No, fair enough. Yes.
Yeah. But anyways, the Supreme Court's been busy, busier than just this story too. So this is kind of a huge story, and this is about the environmental regulations in the EPA. And so Supreme Court has, cut the EPA's ability to be able to do some of these, power plant regulations and such that have to do with greenhouse gases and such. So this is, potentially huge blow to EPA and executive authority to push through some of these, green new looking deal type of things. But what do you guys think about this? Because I mean, this potentially has some earth-shattering stuff. I actually remember when, what was it, 15, 20 years ago, when the Supreme Court came down and said that that the EPA could regulate CO2.
Yes.
So that was a huge issue. So anyways, what do you guys think about this? This is probably the most monumental thing since that, I would think. So.
Well, I'm glad to see these bureaucracies, these three-letter bureaucracies being confronted by the harsh reality of the Constitution. Oh my gosh, you've got some limitation on your power after all. And your butt hurt about that, and the sky is falling now, and we're all going to die because your three-letter institution, your bureaucracy cannot do whatever they want without any kind of legislative process whatsoever. Nothing to vote on. Where's the people's chance to submit their support or their lack of support on these issues, and where's it debated on the floor? Nowhere. It's just a bunch of very small, it's just top-down central planning. And so I love it when top-down central planning gets pushback from the Supreme Court and is put into their place. And okay, no, you can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do that. And so you got to, you guys on the left, if you want to completely kill our standard of living. If you want to go back to the dark ages, you want to ride a horse and a bicycle. First of all, lead from the front and sell your car. Number one, that's the first thing you need to do. But number two is that you need to put these issues up to the table in the legislature, and you need to debate it and go from there and see if it'll pass. Instead of just relying on these top-down central planners that you love. By the way, you love them all, and the fewer the better, and the higher up the better for you. I mean, you would love it if the whole country was run. Of course, it'd have to be a Democrat monarch that would just write laws willy and nilly, and of course you'd love that, long as it was going to make you ride a bicycle and turn in your air conditioner. No longer going to have air conditioning in the summer, Sacramento residents. Sorry, that's what you want. That's what you need to have your monarch order all of us to do, because that's how you think. There you
are. As the federal government, well, I mean, this is true at the state government level too, but as the federal government have grown larger, too often these bureaucrats, without clear statutory authorization, they have made rules and regulations that is affecting our lives. This particular ruling about these CO2 emissions, this particular ruling have far-reaching consequences beyond just this particular situation, because the bureaucracies throughout the United States, whether the state government or the federal government, they have been making rules. They have been using some vague language. Well, Congress nowadays, and this is the fault of Congress too, they have been using these wordings that are vague, and it could be interpreted this way or that way. But the agencies, the bureaucratic agencies, have been using this vague language to take authority upon themselves to pass rules and regulations that affect our lives without having clear mandates from Congress. And this is where it should be. This is where the rubber in the road should be, is that they're supposed to have clear authority from Congress before they pass these rules and regulations. And this is what the Supreme Court found faulty in this particular situation. They did not have clear statutory authorization to pass the rules that they're about to issue. So this thing will go beyond this particular case, because there are many situations where the bureaucratic agencies are doing exactly what the EPA was trying to do in this particular case, which is to issue rules and regulations without clear mandates from Congress. So I am glad about this ruling, and I hope this is a turning of the tide where we could regain some of our liberties from these people who are not elected by me or any one of you guys. They are not elected, but they think they could rule our lives.
And even if they were elected, and elected to be our rulers, that's not how we work.
Exactly.
We don't. It doesn't make it any better whether they're appointed by some other elected representative, or they are elected by the people to rule over us. I mean, either way, in my opinion, doesn't matter. And I know probably Leon's too. He's just bringing that up. That's also true. But yeah, maybe one of these days we'll get to the Federal Reserve.
In all these things, the devil's sort of in the details, because when Congress or legislature passes a law, if those words aren't very precise, then the executive agency may have a lot of leeway, or have been given a lot of leeway in the past to do a lot of things, and it's supposed to be pretty straight and narrow, I guess. So I mean, the question is, when they start interpreting too much, I guess, then it's essentially the legislature ceding their power to the executive. But anyways, that's there's some related stories too. There's so this is kind of along the same lines of this whole greenhouse gas, where we're going with that Green New Deal. But Germany, was a big leader in trying to make everything green, renewable energy there. And now they're kind of firing back up the coal there. So it's, it's kind of crazy. And I tell you, it's, there's clearly a cost to pollution, but it seems like, we were just talking about religion earlier, and it seems like some of this stuff with a lot of pollution is almost religion with some people, because they just push things that may not be feasible, and then suddenly everything is going backwards. What do you guys think about that, real quick?
So you're talking about infeasible, Jason? I am shocked that the government will be pushing something that's infeasible. I am shocked. I am totally shocked. I'm even shocked that you would suggest that. Okay, but on a serious note, you see these clowns on this, they have two things. It's amazing how the left always come up with this beautiful language. They call it clean energy. They call it renewable energy. It sounds so good and so wonderful. Who will be against that? Who will be against clean energy? Who will be against renewable energy? Well, let me make some news right now on this program, okay? There's no such thing as renewable energy. There is no such thing. It does not exist. And there's no such thing as clean energy. You see, the clean energy they talk about is solar and the wind. You know how many birds die to get us those wind power? You know how many birds die from it? It's a bunch of them. As a matter of fact, the American Conservatory Association, they can tell you per kilowatt hour on average how many birds die to give you 1 kilowatt hour of power. They can tell you. Just go on their website, you'll see it. It's there. It's not hidden.
Are
They
you
will never
saying
tell
that?
you about that.
Well,
But they
are you
still
saying
call it.
those? Are you saying those companies are run by Colonel Sanders? He's
I
just
guess.
whacking birds right and
Yes.
left.
Yes. Yes. If you, yeah, we had this big this big solar farm on the way to Las Vegas out here. Birds were flying in the air. Colonel Sanders, yes, birds were flying in the air, but the energy is still clean. Remember that the energy is still clean. Look at all the land use problems and all the habitat disruptions that occur because of wind power and solar power. And they still call it clean energy. There is no such thing as clean energy here in relation to natural gas, which they call well, it's kind of dirty, it's polluting. There's no such thing as clean energy. And this nonsense about renewable, okay? It is true. The wind may be inexhaustible and the sun may be inexhaustible. But that is not the point. You have to convert it into useful energy. I have to be able to use that. Like I have my lights on right now. I want to flip a switch and I want to be able to use it. How do you convert the raw energy into useful energy? You have to use iron ore, aluminum, zinc, copper. All those things are exhaustible products. So you're going to take an inexhaustible thing, use an exhaustible thing to convert it into something useful, and you still want to call that thing that comes out of my switch, or when I turn the switch on, they want to call that energy renewable energy. It is not, because the thing that they're using to convert it is not inexhaustible. Just like natural gas supposedly is not. Well, I can argue about that one too. But there's no such thing as clean energy. There's no such thing as renewable energy. And these clowns in Germany who now trying to turn back on the coal power plants, they're just beginning to realize that their grids are becoming unstable. And this is happening here in the United States already. The grids are becoming unstable because the sun don't shine all the time and the wind don't blow all the time. So these energy sources are intermittent. So you're making the grid unstable. And we're going to see some problems here this summer here in California because all of these people, the environmental left is telling us, oh, it's so nice and wonderful because wind and solar is going to be nice and clean and everything is going to be wonderful. No, it's not. We're going to be living in darkness for a while. It's going to be intermittent because we'll have a blackout. It will come back on. They will give you some lie about why we had a blackout, and then they'll keep on going, and then we have another blackout, and another lie will come, and on it will go. This is what they do to us. They give us this damn nonsense and then try to convince us it is the next best thing since Santa Claus started giving toys to children.
The sun don't shine all the time, and the wind don't always blow. It sounds like lyrics to a song, Leon. But
There you go. There you
yeah,
go.
yeah. I guess they figured that out over there, and they decided, gosh, it's the house is getting kind of cold, honey. Can you turn on the heater?
Yes. 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 You can't get heat. You can't get light. Yeah. So what do you expect to happen when you use an intermittent source of energy? What do you expect to happen?
Well, when everybody's hungry because of this terrible economy, Colonel Biden can send everybody around with buckets to pick up all those dead birds around the windmills.
Yeah, no use in letting those birdies go to waste.
That's right. Yes.
Well, speaking of unstable grids and destabilizing things, we're ready for our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, and we're back to our favorite nut of all, and that is Mr. Biden again is our knucklehead again. And boy, I tell you, it's just crazy. He was apparently at a NATO summit in the NATO summit was in Madrid, and so he blasted the Supreme Court, saying that let's see, what did he say here? He said the one thing that has been destabilized is the outrageous behavior of the Supreme Court of the United States, and overruling not only Roe versus Wade. Remember, he's saying this on a national stage where it has nothing to do with the rest of the world, but whatever. But essentially, the right to privacy. We've been a leader in the world in terms of personal rights and privacy rights, and it is a mistake, in my view, for the Supreme Court to do what it did. This from the guy who was for lockdowns and taking away everybody's rights, and I just can't even imagine. Talk about destabilizing, the guy who literally handed an army's worth of weapons to a terrorist organization as he left Afghanistan. You guys have a quick shot on this?
He was instrumental in getting civil asset forfeiture laws enacted, federally. So, to have him talk about human rights is, again, to utilize a word that starts with H that I don't want to do, because Leon has been so good about it. So I'll pass that on to you, Leon.
Quickly, the reason that, Joe Biden's such a clown, okay? I mean, it's unbelievable. But he's in a foreign land, okay? Fine. At home, we could have politics, we could have disagreements, but he's in foreign land and he's criticizing one of our major institutions here at home. I have a real problem with that. I really do. Even though there's no law against it, he didn't break any laws, but I have a real problem with the President of the United States on foreign land criticizing one of our major institutions here in the United States. I have a real problem with that.
Good point.
Thank you.
Excellent point.
Well,
because division stops at the water's
edge.
Water's edge. Division stops at the water's edge. He violated that, which doesn't surprise me. But that's a good point, Leon.
Thank you.
Well, they're all about division, but that is the one thing that kills me. He talks about privacy, and he's the guy who wanted to force an injection on everybody. Exactly. But I tell you what, we're forced out of time here, so we got to let you go. But we'll catch you at the next one. Until then, stay free.
Indeed, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.